Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I am glad you made it. Wanted to share with you some news that you might not be aware of. The VA Secretary, Dennis McDonough, is out. He will be leaving and he has confirmed his exit date. I'm going to share this with you so everybody's aware. Now, look, I'm going to throw out there that from a leadership perspective within the VA, I mean, he's the top guy. So all the other little pieces of leadership that make up the upper echelon have not impressed me much, especially over the last 3 years. So, good. So moving on, let's jump into this. Hit the thumbs up for me, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. The two asks are really, look, hit the thumbs up, let the video run. Those two things tell YouTube that we are back up and running and getting word out to all of our veteran brothers and sisters, as well as spouses, surviving spouses, dependents, and so forth. So with that, if you want to support the channel another way, you can do that by becoming a member. You can do that by going to the home page, and there you will see highlighted members and a join button. Thank you so much to all you members. I really appreciate you. I am still trying to get through a lot of the comments, and I am keeping my eye open for yours. All right, let's jump into this. Thanks so much for watching. All right, so the headline here on military.com is Dennis McDonough plans to serve out VA Secretary term in Biden administration. So regardless of who wins as far as the presidential election is concerned, the secretary will be leaving, regardless of what party is in the White House. So let's move on here. Veterans Affairs Secretary Dennis McDonough plans to stay in his post through January 20th and until then continue to fight like hell, he says, for veterans as he promised when nominated on December 11th, 2020. Although what happens next for the nearly 4-year cabinet secretary remains to be seen. VA Press Secretary Terrence Hayes confirmed Tuesday that McDonough told let's see, I just lost my spot. That McDonough told employees in town hall meeting recently that he planned to leave the department after completing his entire term. So he's just going to complete his one term and move on regardless of party. So moving on, it says Bloomberg reported earlier in the day that McDonough said he would leave at the end of the administration, with the headline saying he planned to step down after the election, scheduled for November 5th. According to Hayes, McDonough does not plan to leave his post before the end of Biden's term. So then, I don't know. There's a small little piece that maybe Biden leaves before the end of his term. I mean, it's been talked about. Don't know if it's reality, ever going to happen or not. Probably not. But if that were to happen, I wonder if McDonough would leave early or not. So as moving forward here, as a courtesy, cabinet secretaries usually provide letters of resignation in a re-election or at the end of a presidency if the incoming president is the same political party, to allow the president to make his or her own staffing decisions. Otherwise, their appointments expire at noon on the inaugural day, right? So moving on, while former President Donald Trump appointed David Shulkin, the VA's undersecretary for his health under the Obama administration, as VA secretary during his term in the White House, it is unlikely he would appoint any current cabinet secretaries to his administration should he win re-election. McDonough is the second non-veteran. For those that don't know, McDonough, the VA secretary, is a non-veteran. I'm just going to put it out there on the record from my own, just from me. I believe that the head of the VA should absolutely be required to be a 4-year or more active duty veteran at a minimum, right? You did your term, maybe less than 4, whatever. You did your full term for Vietnam folks, whatever, right? So some people have smaller terms depending on the circumstances. So whatever. Active duty, honorably discharged veteran must be a requirement, I believe. So moving on, Again, McDonough is the second non-veteran to hold the position and the longest-serving VA secretary since retired Army General Shinseki, who held the post for more than 5 years from 2009 to 2014. During much of that period, McDonough served as Deputy National Secretary, Advisor, and then Chief of Staff for the then President Barack Obama. Since McDonough took office, the VA's budget has grown by roughly 25% to $328.1 billion, and more than 3 million additional veterans have been enrolled in health care. In 2023, the VA distributed $163 billion in benefits to 1.5 million veterans. All right, so that's a lot, and you would think that the writing would be on the wall with regard to their gigantic deficit of $15 billion. In any case, let's move on. The department has added staff and is adapting to higher demand created by the PACT Act, a legislation passed in 2022 that expanded health care and benefits to millions of veterans exposed to environmental pollutants overseas. But McDonough's tenure has not been without rough patches, I'll say. The VA's $16 billion electronic health record system is stalled, beleaguered by issues concerning patient safety and operability. A program that provides stipends and health care to veterans' caregivers was expanded to include veterans from wars of all eras, but also met opposition from its original caregiver population. And last month, a congressman who sits on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, that would be Representative Van Orden, called for McDonough to resign over bonuses erroneously paid to senior VA executives under a law passed to provide incentive pay to retain employees in their jobs with critical shortages. And I'll add in there also to attract new employees into those same roles. I'm going to see here if they mention a couple other things. I'm not sure if they are or are not. If they don't, I'm going to add them in myself about the things that I'm not excited about with the VA. Moving on, McDonough has joked in the past about the fragility of his job, given that 2 VA secretaries have been asked to resign in the past decade. During a press conference in January, a reporter asked a hypothetical question about what he would think about the VA's current workforce levels if he'd been asked about it 3 years ago. "I'd just be glad to know I hadn't gotten fired yet," McDonough quipped. Last little piece here. When he was asked the question again in all seriousness, McDonough replied that was as serious as a heart attack, brother. And that concludes it. Let me add in a couple things here because they're talking about a few of the rough patches. I'm going to add in, I think, 3 more. So pension, COVID forbearance on mortgages, and also the $15 billion shortfall. I'm going to add those 3 into the mix of the stains on the VA over the last several years. And these ones are kind of more current. So we have the pension. Pension is a low and no income safety net program for war period veterans. Okay, so it is a vulnerable population within the veteran population. There is income limits to that program. There is what's called a maximum allowable pension rate. And just to give easy numbers here, let's say you as the veteran qualify for $20,000 a year as a maximum allowable pension. I'm not going to dive into all the nuts and bolts. There's adjustments that can be made and so forth, but loosely it works like this. If you qualify for $20,000 but you have $10,000 a year, $800 a month, coming in from the Social Security, well, then they're going to take $20,000 a year, subtract that 10, and leave you with 10. That $10,000 then becomes your pension amount per year, broken down on monthly payments. So in any case, what had happened here was the VA and the Social Security Administration did not cross-reference and talk like they were supposed to. A decade or more goes by, and they go, oh, wow, we paid Veteran Jane and Veteran Joe, overpaid them over that maximum allowable rate by $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 over the course of this past 10 years. Yeah, we need all that back. Remember that this is the most vulnerable population, or one of the most vulnerable populations anyway, in our group, right? So you talk about the VA is trying to prevent homelessness, yet they're going to take money away from those that are in the very most lowest levels of income and potentially push them onto the street. So that was a fiasco. I believe they stopped it. They're still trying to figure out how they can recoup some of that money. I think there needs to be some sort of a statute of limitations as far as that's concerned. Maybe if you didn't catch it, you can only go back 2 years. Then you got to take that and divide that 2 years loss or overpayment over a 10-year period, and that's your recoup rate. Something like that makes sense. The next one would be the COVID forbearance. This is where during the heights of COVID, people were losing their jobs and it was hard to find a new job. If that was the case, if you had a VA home loan, you could ask to take a portion of your payments, 6 months, 12 months worth of payments, and add that to the rear of your loan and have that breathing room to get things in order, get working again, then just start resume your payments like nothing ever happened. And you just have instead of paying off your loan in whatever 2055, you're going to pay it off in 2056, right? So that was a great program. However, a bunch of veterans, approximately 30 or 40,000 veterans, signed up for that, and then the VA pulled the rug out from underneath them and they expired the program, sunset the program, and would not allow the end result, which is the moving the payments to the end and pick up your payments and move forward, thus putting the lenders in a situation to go back to the borrower, the veteran, and say, hey, guess what? I know that you haven't made a payment for 6 months, and that equates to whatever it is, right? 6 months, if you're $2,000 a month, we'll call it $12,000. So you got $12,000 or more, right? This is just monkey math. $12,000 behind. You need to bring that current or lose your house. You're going to go into foreclosure. And that is, again, the position that the VA put these veterans in. Some veterans sold their houses. Some veterans ended up doing a loan modification to, oh, by the way, a much higher interest rate. Maybe they were at 2.5 during COVID, but now they did their loan modification and they're stuck with a 6.5 or a 7%. So not good. And what they're doing here is they're forcing, again, let's take care of, let's make sure we don't have homeless veterans. But meanwhile, the leadership doesn't see the writing on the wall and potentially puts tens of thousands of veterans on the streets by getting them foreclosed on. Horrific. The last one I wanted to bring up was the $15 billion deficit. $15 billion shortfall for the remainder of this year, which is only a couple months, and next year. So it's $2.9 billion with a B, $2.9 billion short this year for your benefits. Primarily what I've seen written is they're focused on pension and other benefits. Not sure what they're talking about, but this is the VA saying that these things are at risk because of their own accounting issues and inability to forecast appropriately for things like, the PACT Act and driving in, a bunch of new veterans, new claims, which they should. That's what you should do. Opening up the doorway to healthcare, getting more veterans into the healthcare than ever before. All good stuff. But you need to inform Congress that you're going to need more money instead of saying, well, I think we can cover it internally. Let's just get more money, and then guess what? If you don't use it all, that's good, right? I get it. But look, it's $15 billion's too much to be short. So that $15 billion, again, 2.9 for this fiscal year, and then the remainder, the other 13 or $12 billion is for next year. They got Congress on their heels trying to figure out how to make them whole again. So I'm not super excited about the history of the VA here recently. And with that, we'll go ahead and end it. Bottom line is the VA secretary, non-veteran, is out the door when Biden is out of office, regardless of what political party wins the presidential race. He is gone. So with that, I'd love to see your comments. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.